You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Philip Toledo coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia. It's Tuesday evening here on this side of the world, March 2nd, 2021, and tonight we have updates from several of our correspondents across North America. Carlo Valdez in Union Township reports about two New Jersey pharmaceutical giants, Merck and Johnson Johnson, to collaborate on vaccine production. Then we'll head to Edmonton, Alberta with Thomas Likeness.
Up here in Canada, there's some disagreement about whether to use the AstraZeneca vaccine on Canadian seniors.
EJ Gonzalez in Alexandria, Virginia.
Virginia eases COVID restrictions as cases continue to see a decline.
Julian Fiesta in Delano, California.
LA County Dining grant program to help restaurants keep their doors open.
Angel Mombreri in Sacramento tells us about California educators start receiving COVID vaccinations as schools there in the state plan to reopen. Then Jane Kathleen Gregorio in Corpus Christi reports about Governor Greg Abbott announcing the state mandate to be lifted by March 10 and Texas winning the Governor's Cup for the 9th year in a row. Michael Hudson in Seattle reports about the Johnson Johnson vaccine on pace to arrive in Washington state. And for business news, Bobby Soriano tells us about the first city in the United States to ban all new gas stations and Apple opening all U.S. stores for the first time since the start of the pandemic. Eliza Gonzalez-Maglicmont in Washington, D.C.
For Women's History Month, President Joe Biden commends women's leadership in the battle against COVID.
And then tonight, for our virtual roundtable, March is Women's History Month. Tonight, we will celebrate accomplished and visionary women throughout history. Our coverage begins now. Spanish Finance Minister and spokesperson of Spanish government, Maria Jesus Montero, comments on the data the government released showing that the number of people in Spain registered as unemployed. The number has surpassed 4 million for the first time in 5 years in February, as pandemic restrictions hit the country's tourism-dependent economy. Spain's regional governments responsible for health have imposed various measures to try to curb the spread of the coronavirus, including shutting down bars and restaurants and nightly curfews, which have hit the hospitality sector hard. In Nigeria, the local governor said all 279 girls kidnapped from their boarding school in the northern part of the country have been released and are on government premises. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari expressed overwhelming joy over the release of the girls from days of captivity, vowing tougher action against kidnappers. Nigeria has been rocked by 4 mass abductions of students in less than 3 months, sparking widespread anger against the government and memories of the 2014 kidnapping of hundreds of schoolgirls in Chibok, the country's east that shocked the world. Take a look.
To make sure of their health, have to undergo so many cases to ensure that they are fit and well to be back to their schools or to reunite with their family. And I'm calling for the parents. They shouldn't take this as an advantage for taking back their children not to go to school. I assure you that the government will provide all measures to protect the further occurrence of this incident.
Authorities initially said 317 girls were abducted in the raid by hundreds of gunmen on the government girls' secondary school in remote Jangjibe village on Friday. But Matawale said the total number of female students abducted was 279. Government officials had been in talks with the kidnappers known locally as bandits. A source said, quote, repentant bandits had been contacted to reach out to their former comrades as part of the efforts to free the students. In other news, Yemeni infants suffering from the malnutrition received treatment at the Al Sabin Hospital in Sana'a, as the United Nations warns of a death sentence against the war-torn country after a donor conference yielded less than half the funds needed to prevent a devastating famine. Take a look.
Pledges announced total approximately $1.7 billion. That is less than we received for the humanitarian response plan in 2020, and $1 billion less than was pledged at the conference we held in 2019. Millions of Yemeni children, women and men desperately need aid to survive. Cutting aid is a death sentence. The best that can be said about today is that it represents a down payment. I thank those who did pledge generously, and I ask others to consider again what they can do to help stave off the worst famine the world has seen in decades.
Describing the outcome as disappointing, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the pledges were less than the UN received in 2020, when donations were first hit by the coronavirus downturn, and $1 billion shy of funds offered in the 2019 appeal. More than 100 governments and donors took part in the conference, co-hosted by Sweden and Switzerland, as Yemen's Houthi rebels pushed to seize the government's last northern stronghold. The 6-year-old civil war pits the Iran-backed insurgents against an internationally recognized government backed by a Saudi-led military coalition. Guterres said the only way of relieving the suffering of Yemeni people was to secure a nationwide ceasefire and a political solution to end a grinding conflict that has plunged the nation into the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Now, for today's COVID-19 statistics update. According to the Coronavirus Resource Center of Johns Hopkins University in Medicine, as of 6 p.m. Eastern Time today, Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021, the number of cases of COVID-19 reported worldwide is now more than 114,618,000. The top 3 countries on the list with the most number of recorded cases are the U.S., with more than 28,675,000, India with more than 11,124,000, and Brazil with more than 10,587,000. Sadly, this virus has now already claimed more than 2,542,000 lives worldwide. The countries with the 3 most number of COVID-19 related deaths are the U.S. with more than 515,000, Brazil with more than 255,000, and Mexico with more than 186,000. In other COVID-related news tonight, Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo on Monday became the first recipient of a coronavirus vaccine under the global Covax scheme, as U.S. health workers prepared to distribute nearly 4 million doses of the single-shot Johnson Johnson jab. Covax, a scheme designed to ensure poorer countries do not miss out on vaccinations as worries grow that rich nations are hogging the doses, is aiming to deliver at least 2 billion jabs by the end of the year. Akufo-Addo received his AstraZeneca shot live on television along with his wife. In neighboring Ivory Coast, a presidential spokesman got the country's first jab, also part of a Covax delivery. The Ivory Coast received some 504,000 jabs from Covax, while Ghana got 600,000 that will start to roll out this week. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi also got his coronavirus jab on Monday. Although a glitch in the online booking system meant thousands of others were turned away from hospitals nationwide. And here in the United States, 3.9 million doses of the Johnson Johnson vaccine are due to be delivered after it became the 3rd jab approved by U.S. regulators. The Johnson Johnson rollout comes as a boost to President Joe Biden's plan to beat back a virus that has killed more than 500,000 Americans, making the U.S. the world's worst hit nation. Britain announced Sunday that it has given more than 20 million people at least 1 dose of a coronavirus vaccine, with the rapid rollout providing hope in a country with Europe's highest death toll. Health Secretary Matt Hancock made an announcement in a video message on Twitter. Take a look.
I'm absolutely delighted that we've reached the milestone of vaccinating 20 million people across the UK. It is a magnificent achievement. These real-world effects are backed up by some exciting new data that shows that a single shot of either the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine or of the Pfizer vaccine works against severe infection among the over 70s with a more than 80% reduction in hospitalizations.
According to government figures released Sunday, a total of 20,089,551 people have received a first dose. But dampening the good news was the detection of a coronavirus strain that emerged in Brazil, which is feared to be more contagious and more resistant to vaccines.
Finally, I want to turn to a different subject. The 6 cases of the variant of concern that was first identified in Manaus in Brazil, that we have identified here in the UK, 3 in Scotland and 3 in England. We know that 5 of these people quarantined at home as they were legally required to do. We've been in contact with them and their families, and we're grateful to them for understanding the seriousness of the situation. We're putting in place surge testing in South Gloucestershire as a precaution, and I urge everyone to remain vigilant.
The country is still under national lockdown, but daily cases, hospitalizations, and deaths have all fallen dramatically since late January, despite the emergence of a more infectious variant in the country. Now, back here in the United States, 2 New Jersey pharmaceutical giants, Merck and Johnson Johnson, are collaborating in an effort to speed up the government's effort in supplying more COVID-19 vaccines for the country. In Union Township, Carlo Valdez files this report.
Thanks, Philip. On Tuesday, the Biden administration announced of 2 New Jersey drug maker giants, Merck and Johnson Johnson, who will be collaborating to produce the single-shot COVID-19 vaccine. Johnson Johnson had fallen behind in production, so they looked to make a deal with Merck, a longtime and fierce rival, who had failed to make their own coronavirus vaccine. This historic partnership means that the United States would have enough doses for every adult American by the end of May, instead of Biden's administration's previous goal of having enough shots by the end of July. And as for coronavirus stats and numbers for New Jersey, the state reports of 2,820 new positive PCR tests, pushing the total to 707,099. Sadly, New Jersey is reporting 40
manufacture the vaccine and asking the Department of Defense to provide daily logistical support to strengthen Johnson & Johnson's efforts.
Up next, reports from Edmonton, Alberta and Alexandria, Virginia. You're watching Eagle News America. Stay with us.
Factual.
We have to defeat the virus everywhere.
Timely information. Balanced, not only in the country, but also abroad.
I'm certain of one thing.
Interviews that people need to know. Watch Aguila Pilipinas. A 1-hour newscast of reports coming from regional hubs in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Know the important updates in Asia in ASEAN in Focus. Track the latest stories in the provinces in Aguila Provincia. Tune into Mata ng Aguila, the evening primetime news program of Net25. Balanced and objective, Mata ng Aguila covers national and international issues, tackles news on business, health, science and technology, entertainment, sports and human interest features, and current events. And Eagle News International delivers the latest global reports, impartial, accessible, and up-to-date. It brings to fore EBC's rich international scope and access to valuable information streams.
Well, thank you to thank our health outdoor.
Catch these programs on Net25. You can also watch our news programs through eaglenews.ph and Eagle News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Welcome back. You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Philip Toledo in Atlanta. There's some disagreement brewing over the use of the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine on seniors living in Canada. Joining us this evening is Bureau Chief Thomas Likeness with the details. Thomas.
Thank you, Philip. Well, it's a bit of an academic dueling scientists arguing over the advisability of vaccinating seniors with the recently approved AstraZeneca vaccine. We've got two agencies in Canada weighing in on this. One is Health Canada. Now, Health Canada is responsible for approving all vaccines, all drugs, all medical devices, anything that you use on a patient. Then we have the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, also a Government of Canada agency. So last week, Health Canada approved AstraZeneca's inoculant for anyone over the age of 18, even seniors. Health Canada says, they're getting data from countries that are using it on seniors, and that data suggests that the vaccine is safe, it's effective for them. But the Advisory Committee on Immunization is saying, hey, wait a minute. It says in formal clinical trials, the vaccine was not tested on enough people over the age of 65 to draw any statistically meaningful conclusions. The committee does not recommend using it on people older than 65. Several European countries have already adopted that stance. Others, like Britain, are still using it. But many countries have restricted the use of AstraZeneca. And again, it's that same reason they're citing limited clinical data. The vaccine has an efficacy of about 62% in people between the ages of 18 and 24, or 18 and 64, I should say. That's compared to the other two vaccines that have been approved in Canada, Pfizer and Moderna. They have higher efficacy at about 94%. But despite the lower effectiveness, Health Canada's chief medical advisor, Dr. Supriya Sharma, says it's better than nothing. She says, based on all of the information her department has received, the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the risks. And she says she sees no problem with vaccinating seniors using the AstraZeneca formula. But that's not good enough for the government of Alberta. Our provincial health minister here, his name's Tyler Shandro. He says the AstraZeneca product will not be provided to people over 65, at least not yet. There's no word on what other provinces might do. In Edmonton, Canada, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, Thomas. And I can definitely see if you're someone who might identify as a senior and you're sitting there in Canada, you might be seeing some mixed messages. The question is the AstraZeneca vaccine, based upon what you've heard from experts, is it safe for seniors, Thomas?
Yeah, there's nothing really about the safety that's the issue. It's the effectiveness. And what the Advisory Committee on Immunization is saying is when you have more effective alternatives, those are the ones you should use. Now, again, it's important to remember if there's an outbreak among seniors, the consequences are far more severe than you would expect to find in, say, the 18 to 49 age group.
Right.
Seniors tend to get sicker. They can't ward off that infection as easily. So you want people in that age group to have the most effective protection possible. And all it is saying, all the advisory committee is saying is let's limit the use of AstraZeneca for now to those under 65 and wait for more research. Philip?
Yeah, that's a good point, Thomas. Now, I know that, Canada, like everywhere else, is in a race to get these vaccines to as many people as possible. Well, what effect is withholding the AstraZeneca vaccine from seniors, what effect is that going to have on the overall rollout?
Well, the experience in countries where it has been withheld from seniors, things have slowed down somewhat. And part of that is because this vaccine has minimal storage requirements. You don't need those extreme refrigeration temperatures that you do, especially for the Pfizer, not quite so bad for the Moderna. So it's ideal for use in remote areas, in institutions where perhaps they don't have the refrigeration capacity. So that could affect seniors living in more distant communities. And like I say, again, in those homes where they can't store the other vaccines. Alberta's health minister says he'll be reviewing the situation over the next few days to determine the impact. And again, I'm not aware of any other provinces in Canada that have restricted the use of this product. Philip?
Well, thanks so much for that report, Thomas. Before I let you go, just curious, are you hearing anything from, those that might be seniors in the community about this news there in Alberta? Is it changing their trust in the vaccine program at all?
Not so much the trust. Many of them are frustrated. They simply want to get vaccinated. They're aware of the risks, and to them, a vaccine is freedom. You can get out and mingle more. A lot of seniors have become very much homebound just to avoid the risk of infection. So it's more one of frustration. If this is going to hold things up, or they've been given false hope that, hey, we've got another vaccine up, but no, you can't have it because it might not work. You can see the frustration setting in.
Right, Thomas. Well, thank you so much for that report tonight. Stay safe.
You too.
The state of Virginia eases some COVID restrictions as the infection rate there decreases. In Alexandria, EJ Gonzalez has the story. EJ?
Thanks, Philip. Yep, Virginia reached its peak of daily positive cases at the beginning of 2021. Now, as we enter the month of March, the number of new cases is on a downward trend. According to the Virginia Department of Health, only 57 new confirmed positive cases were recorded yesterday. The current 7-day positivity rate now stands at 6.7% for the state. The vaccination rates in Virginia is on a steady rise as the state is averaging just over 47,000 doses administered per day. 15.5% of Virginians have received at least one dose of the vaccine. That equates to over 1.3 million residents. The number of people who have been fully vaccinated in the state has now reached over 697,000. With a decline in the new COVID cases, Governor Ralph Northam decides to ease some restrictions for the state. Several school districts have reopened the school doors and resumed in-person learning this week. In Arlington County, kindergarten up to second grade see about 75% of the students back in the classroom. Meanwhile, in Fairfax County, parents of students in the 8th, 9th, and 12th grade have decided to opt into the hybrid learning model. So that means 25,000 students have returned to the classrooms this week. As for the lifting of restrictions, here are some of the highlighted changes that began this week. The maximum number for social gatherings will increase from 10 to 25 people for outdoor settings, but will remain capped at 10 persons for indoor settings. Indoor entertainment venues will remain at the same cap of 30% or 250 persons, whichever is the less of the two, but outdoor venues have increased to 30% or 1,000 persons. If current trends continue, these venues may be able to operate at 30% capacity with no cap on the amount of people starting in April. All restaurants, dining establishments, food courts have now extended operating hours from 10 p.m. to midnight. On May 1st, overnight, summer camps will be able to open with strict mitigation measures in place, but registration for summer camps are now open. Now, this ease of restrictions does not mean that the pandemic is over, as new variants of the disease are now found throughout the country. The Virginia Health Department announced that the South Africa variant of the disease, also known as B.1.351, has reached the state. According to the Centers for Disease Control, Virginia, Maryland, and D.C. are 3 out of the 15 states and jurisdictions where this variant has been found. Though restrictions are being lifted and numbers for the virus are seeing a decline, we remind everyone to stay disciplined in keeping up mitigation measures to help in curbing the spread. In Alexandria, Virginia, EJ Gonzalez, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, EJ. Now, I know, it feels like we've been down this road of restrictions, release the restrictions again. Now some of the restrictions are being relaxed. Well, what about for you and your family? Is there anything that you're looking forward to doing with some relaxed restrictions, or are you going to be staying inside more?
Well, I mean, with the ease of restrictions, I mean, we still actually haven't dined indoors yet or outside of the house, for that matter. But with the weather changing soon to get warmer, and for us, daylight savings time is coming like in about a week or so. That means daylight's going to be lasting for a lot longer. So I think I'm just ready to start walking outside again. It's just been too cold over here. So that's probably one of the things that we're looking forward to.
Absolutely. And speaking of stretching your legs, I know that you're the sports guy and you're close to Washington, D.C. What's the buzz in sports this week over there in the nation's capital?
Yeah, for sports here in D.C., there's some headline news about Alex Smith. And for those who aren't familiar, he was the winner of the Comeback Player of the Year for the National Football League last year and the main quarterback for the Washington football team. However, it doesn't look like he'll be joining the ball club next season. Alex Smith opened up in an interview where he said that his return, although spectacular and inspiring, actually was doubted by Washington. He said that his return from injury and to prove he can still be effective on the field gave the coaches, quote, a wrench in their plans for the future. And Smith said that he wasn't too fond of that. Though the season proved to be special for both Washington and Alex Smith, it's expected that these two will be parting ways this week. And the void at the quarterback position for Washington has yet to be filled.
Well, thank you so much for that report, EJ. Hope you're staying safe there in Alexandria.
Thanks, Philip.
Now, still to come, we'll have stories from our correspondents in Delano and Sacramento, California, and Corpus Christi in the Lone Star State. Eagle News America will return in just a moment. Stay with us.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights, sharpen your instincts for smart decision making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Bakit po ayaw ni Papa yung mag-celebrate ng birthday niya?
Hindi mo kailangan yun.
Ang dami pa lang hindi nagawa si Papa para sa birthday niya, no? Alam mo, pwede pa natin ang gawa ng paraan para matupad lahat ng mga birthday bucket list ni Papa D. Alam ko na.
Ha? It's no! Oh, left, left! Oh! Yeah, man! Oh, yeah!
Sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Philip Toledo in Atlanta. Helping keep Los Angeles restaurant doors open, the county launches the Keep LA County Dining Grant Program. In Delano, Eagle News correspondent Julian Fiesta has the details. Julian?
Thank you, Philip. In Los Angeles County, many in the restaurant industry have been financially impacted due to the COVID-19 restrictions placed by state and county public health guidance. In an effort to provide resources to restaurant business owners struggling to keep afloat during these difficult times, the county launches the Keep LA County Dining Grant Program. The program is funded by the CARES Act and provides the needed resources to help restaurants maintain their business and keep their doors open to customers and the public. Specifically designed for small businesses in the food service industry that are located in Los Angeles County, restaurants that provided outdoor dining services as of November 24, 2020, will be given priority for this funding. Eligibility requirements include the following: fixed brick and mortar place of businesses that has a full service kitchen, no more than 25 employees, located in the county of Los Angeles, excluding those in the cities of Los Angeles and Pasadena, no more than 5 business locations, not a franchise business, a health inspection grade of at least a C, and fully operational before March 4, 2020. In Delano, California, Julian Fiesta, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, Julian. Now, are any of these restaurants eligible if they already received some sort of assistance through the CARES Act?
Unfortunately, Philip, they are not eligible. Businesses who have already received previous funding from other CARES Act programs will not qualify. This is a $5.6 million program that will provide 2,500 qualified businesses a grant of $30,000 to use in employee payroll, business expenses, and working capital to maintain their business operations. Approved businesses must make sure that they will not use any of this grant funding to cover payroll expenses already paid by the Payroll Protection Program, or PPP. Philip?
Thanks, Julianne. I'm sure this will be a much well-received help, to restaurant owners there in the area. Just real quick before I let you go, is if someone were to go to Delano, is there a local restaurant that you might be able to recommend for them to support?
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of small businesses here in Delano. If you like Hispanic food, we have tons and tons of amazing Hispanic food. So just let me know and I can give you tons of recommendations.
All right, that sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Julianne, for your report. We'll catch up with you towards the end of our episode.
See ya.
Educators and employees in California start receiving COVID vaccinations as the state gears up for school reopenings. In Sacramento, Bureau Chief Angel Membrere files this report.
Thank you. Vaccinations continue to be given to many across the state. In an effort to get all Californians vaccinated, a new notification tool has been launched, where you can sign up and be notified when you are eligible to receive the vaccine. Check out myturn.ca.gov for more information and to sign up. With the plans to reopen schools, one of the school districts here in the state of California, the Elk Grove Unified School District, now has a concrete plan to open this March and is moving forward with providing vaccinations to all the educators and employees with the first dose of the vaccine. Now, as a state, Governor Newsom explains how all 58 counties are moving forward to provide vaccines for more educators. Let's listen.
Today marks more broadly a commitment for the state of California across the spectrum in all 58 counties to provide at least 10%, a minimum of 75,000 doses we are setting aside for our educators, for our school employees broadly, all up and down the state of California. On Thursday and Friday, we'll actually be utilizing the 2 large FEMA sites, Thursday and Friday in Southern California and in Northern California, as educator days exclusively to provide even additional vaccinations. Those don't come out of the 75,000 allocations. Those will be additive. It's just a commitment, our resolve to prioritize our educators as we're prioritizing our most vulnerable, our seniors and those in congregate care facilities, skilled nursing facilities, and the like.
Governor Newsom also explains the $6.6 billion package to reopen schools and provide more support for students and staff. Let's hear what he has to say.
This is a $6.6 billion commitment. $2 billion specifically for grants to help with in-person instruction. Those are grants that can provide more PPE, though we have set aside 3 months of free PPE for ventilation, for spacing, for issues related to health and safety. $4.6 billion of the $6.6 to deal with reimagining the school year, giving districts flexibility, looking at school days, looking at intervention, deeper intervention to address kids' wellness, to address their needs as it relates to community learning hubs, address learning loss as the districts see fit, including potentially extending the school year and moving the school year into the summer. 4.6 billion of that 6.6 provides for that flexibility. We incentivize opening up our schools by providing real resources to do it.
In Sacramento, California, Angel and Barry, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Now we'll head to the Lone Star State, which is celebrating its Independence Day today. The same day that Governor Greg Abbott announced that he is going to lift the state mask mandate by March 10th. That story and more from Bureau Chief Jane Kathleen Gregorio. Howdy, Jane.
Howdy, Philip. And a happy Independence Day for Texas to you. Well, today, March 2nd, marks the day that Texas declared independence from Mexico. And another historic event that took place today, during the governor's address to the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce, Governor Greg Abbott issued Executive Order GA-34, which lifts the mask mandate in Texas and expands occupancy in all businesses and facilities in the state to 100% by next Wednesday, March 10th. Governor Abbott stated, with the medical advancements of vaccines and antibody therapeutic drugs, Texas now has the tools to protect Texans from the virus. We must now do more to restore livelihoods and normalcy for Texans by opening the state 100%. Make no mistake, COVID-19 has not disappeared, but it is clear from the recoveries, vaccinations, reduced hospitalizations, and safe practices that Texans are using that state mandates are no longer needed. The governor mentioned that today's announcement does not cancel safe practices conducted the past year. Instead, it is a reminder that each person is responsible for their own safety and that of others, and that this executive order is to ensure all businesses and families in Texas have the freedom to determine their own destiny. The governor also shared the advancement Texas has made, which is allowing the state to open fully and lift the mask mandate. For example, the nearly 5.7 million vaccines that have been administered to date. And by Wednesday, he expects that number to reach about 7 million. He also deployed the statewide Save Our Seniors initiative, where over 1,100 National Guardsmen will help communities vaccinate homebound seniors across the state. Corpus Christi, in fact, was one of the first areas where the program was launched. He mentioned that the state also has a surplus of personal protective equipment and can perform over 100,000 COVID-19 tests a day. And the state has invested in a variety of antibody therapeutic drugs, which have kept thousands of Texans out of hospitals. The current number of active COVID-19 cases is the lowest since November, meaning more Texans are recovering from COVID-19 than contracting it. In other news, the governor announced Monday that Texas wins the Site Selections Governor's Cup for record-shattering 9th year in a row. The award highlights the top-performing states for job creation and capital investment. Governor Abbott stated, despite the challenges faced from the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen what Texas can achieve when we foster an environment that empowers people to succeed. Meanwhile, I hope you're staying safe and healthy in your part of the country. In Corpus Christi, Texas, I'm Jane Kathleen Gregorio, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, Jane. And, that's definitely good news of, the numbers trending in the downward direction there in Texas. But I'm sure that just like everywhere else in the country, right, to mask or to not to mask is the big debate. Well, what if some businesses or establishments want to continue to enforce facial coverings or masks on their premises? Would they be allowed to do so?
Orders, nor make any penalties or allow penalties to be imposed for failing to wear a face mask. Philip?
Thanks, Jane. And, as we've talked many times, especially about Whataburger, right? I grew up in Texas, so, a lot of, I'm still connected to a lot of people there, and I'm hearing a lot of mixed reactions, in social media. Have you had a chance to connect with anybody else in your community to hear what some of the reactions might be to the governor's announcement?
I actually per se myself have not yet been outside to encounter or hear about everybody's reactions, but I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of it tomorrow, as there are some people that are very wary of being exposed to others in that capacity without facial coverings. So there will probably be some mixed feelings about the situation. Philip?
Absolutely. Well, we'll look forward to having you back on Eagle News America tomorrow night with an update on this story. Thanks so much, Jane.
Thank you, Philip.
Now, the Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine is on the way to Washington State. Michael Hudson in Seattle has the details.
So I just wanted to update you on some of the numbers here in Washington State. So our positive COVID-19 cases are 344,000 and 5,038 deaths. After being given an emergency authorization by the FDA and CDC this past weekend, the third and newest COVID-19 vaccine, this time done by famous company Johnson & Johnson, could be available in Washington State within just a few weeks. This new vaccine is known to be the strongest of the three vaccines, the other two being Moderna and Pfizer, on the market right now. Explained what this particular vaccine is, Dr. John Dunn, who is the medical director for preventive care at Kaiser Permanente Hospital here in Washington, said, and I quote, "It operates on the same basic principle. You get injected with a very small amount of protein that your immune system will then mount a response to. That protein looks just like the protein that is on the surface of the actual COVID-19 coronavirus organism. And that means that if you ever get infected with that organism in the future, your immune system will recognize it immediately and can mount a good, effective response to it." And I end quote. It was also stated that this new vaccine will allow many people who live in the rural areas to have better access to it. Though this is incredible news and a solid plan has already been in place, the clock will be ticking as all of the residents here continue to wait until these 3 weeks come up. We'll be sure to keep you up to date on everything and anything that goes on with this news story. Reporting from Seattle, Washington, I'm Michael Hudson, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to the studio.
Up next, we'll have reports from Washington, D.C. and business news. You're watching Eagle News America. We'll be right back.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Bagong batch of contenders ang muling magtatagisan sa kantahan ngayong Sabado. Ibig sabihin yan, new batch of talents din ang ating masasaksihan. This is Tagisan ng Galing Part 2, Singing Edition.
Hey there,
Attorney Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net25.
Here are tonight's stories from our business desk. The first U.S. city to ban all new gas stations, and Apple opens all of its U.S. stores for the first time since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. UBC's Bobby Soriano has the report.
Good evening. U.S. markets have closed. Here are your latest business headlines. The Green Movement takes another major step in the U.S. as we now have the first city in the country to ban new gasoline stations. Petaluma, California, a city of 61,000 residents and located just north of San Francisco, has become the first in the country to pass legislation that looks to permanently halt the construction of new gas stations. The legislation will also outlaw new gasoline pumps and streamline the process for adding more electric vehicle infrastructure at existing gas stations. The prohibition symbolizes how the country is shifting towards alternative energy sources from the ground up, as the city plans to completely phase out carbon emissions by 2030, with the state of California banning the sale of new gas-powered cars by 2035 and requiring 75% of all heavy trucks sold locally to be electric by that date. Local and state governments are following the lead of federal authorities, as the Biden administration is also looking to boost renewable energy companies with a $2 trillion climate and infrastructure plan. In other first news, yesterday marked the first time Apple has been able to open all 270 of its retail locations here in the United States since the start of the pandemic. Although many stores still had restrictions in place to continue the fight against the coronavirus, the news is very much welcomed not just by Apple, but by the retail community as a whole. Physical stores have been battered globally by inconsistent restrictions over the past year and worries about additional waves of the virus forcing more lockdowns. But the retail sector hopes that other companies with a heavy physical presence will be able to soon follow suit, especially as the vaccine rollout continues into the year. The only remaining Apple stores that remain closed worldwide are about a dozen in Brazil and France, and shares of Apple were up 5% yesterday on the news. U.S. indices pulled back slightly today after the strongest advance in months on Monday, as investors continue to weigh their outlook on the bond markets. Reporting from New York, Bobby Soriano, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
President Joe Biden issues a proclamation on Women's History Month, commending their leadership in the battle against the COVID-19 pandemic. In our nation's capital, EBC's Eliza Gonzalez-Maglicmot joins us tonight with more. Eliza?
Good Tuesday evening to you, Philip, and a great Wednesday morning to our friends on the other side of the globe. March is Women's History Month, and like you said, President Joe Biden issues a proclamation recognizing this month-long event. The proclamation mentions women and girls' contribution to the nation's history amid discrimination and undue hardship. This includes marching for and winning the right to vote, campaigning against injustice, shattering barriers, expanding the possibilities of American life. It mentions also women's heroic efforts, although some may have gone untold. It says how women served during World War II, organized and litigated efforts during the Civil Rights Movement, represented the nation in the fight for human rights, peace, and security. Now, President Biden recognizes how millions of Black women, immigrant women, and those from diverse groups have strengthened the nation across generations. In this time of COVID-19, the statement commends women, particularly women of color, who are out there working 24/7 to defeat the pandemic, from those in vaccine research to public health officials to frontline and essential workers. This includes educators, childcare providers, store workers, and farm workers. He also states the historic election and inauguration of the country's first woman vice president. Now, aside from encouraging everyone to celebrate women's contribution and progress, he encourages reflecting on the burdens women still carry today. This includes exacerbation of barriers that have held back women, particularly women of color, for generations. Gender and racial disparities in pay, disproportionate share of caregiving continuing to fall on women and girls, and job losses due to the pandemic, setting women's labor force participation back to its lowest point in more than 30 years, threatening the security and well-being of women and their families, not to mention that of the economic progress of the nation. Now, Biden states statistics on the number of mothers leaving the workforce as thrice that of the number of fathers, on women of color disproportionately facing unemployment, on the dramatic rise of food insecurity, particularly in female-headed households, and on the alarming rate of intimate partner violence. Now, the proclamation mentions how the Biden administration will build on women's efforts through the White House Gender Policy Council, focusing on the needs and contributions of women and girls and ensuring a government focus on gender equity. Now, the president invites the nation to honor accomplished and visionary women who have helped build America and those trailblazers helping build a nation of endless possibilities for all of its women and girls. Now, for some weather update, it's 44 degrees Fahrenheit or 7 degrees Celsius here in the nation's capital. In Washington, Eliza Gonzalez, Manglikmot, Eagle News. Will live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, Eliza. Now, in connection to this, or to the celebrations, I know the proclamation made a reference to womenshistorymonth.gov. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's on that website?
Philip, it is a very interesting website. It is a collaboration of agencies and other organizations observing and celebrating women's crucial role in American history. Now, the website offers virtual exhibits, art collections, video, audio, and photo clips showing how women changed history in the areas of politics, education, work, health, fashion, and the home front. You will find their schedules of virtual events this month, like notable women's films, conversations, involvement in the struggle for women's rights and suffrage, biographies, and everything else in between. Now, it's quite powerful and very, very informative. Philip?
Thanks, Eliza. And I wanted to ask, what agencies and organizations are a part of this collaboration?
Philip, commemorating and encouraging the study, observance, and celebration of the vital role of women in American history. Those part of this collaboration are the Library of Congress, the National Archives and Records Administration, the National Endowment for the Humanities, National Gallery of Art, National Park Service, the Smithsonian Institution, and the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. So quite a number of them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that report, Eliza. And, you know, as you mentioned, March is Women's History Month. And we may be running out a little bit of time in today's episode. So I want to invite everybody, building upon Eliza's report there, tomorrow night on our virtual roundtable, we're going to talk about some of the amazing women and their contributions to our history in our time. So for all of you out there, please, I know that you watch every night, but make sure you tune in tomorrow as we continue our conversation on Women's History Month. Now, before we go, we want to give a salute to all of the healthcare workers, first responders, and essential workers that are out there on the front line helping all of us get through the pandemic, and a special shout out to all of the women essential workers braving the pandemic so that we can all stay safe. We want to give you a tremendous round of applause. We truly appreciate you and all that you do. Well, that is it for today's episode of Eagle News America. Thank you so much for joining us. And we hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and you're staying well. I'm Philip Toledo. We live in interesting times.